One of the strangest tragedies of the 21st century isn't happening in a country consumed by war, famine, or economic collapse. It's unfolding in one of the richest, safest, and most technologically advanced societies ever built. Something far more unsettling is taking place. People are no longer asking, "How can I build a better future?" Increasingly, they're asking whether the future is worth building at all. That question doesn't always arrive dramatically. More often, it hides inside ordinary routines. The alarm rings, work begins, messages are answered, bills are paid, days pass, weeks disappear, life keeps moving, yet something feels strangely absent. Not pain intense enough to stop everything. Not happiness strong enough to make anything meaningful. Just a quiet emptiness that slowly becomes normal. Perhaps that's the most dangerous kind of crisis a civilization can face. Not when people fight to survive, but when surviving no longer feels connected to a reason for living. For centuries, societies feared invasion, hunger, and disease because those forces threatened life itself. Today, another threat has emerged. A society can remain peaceful, wealthy, highly educated, and remarkably efficient, while quietly losing something much harder to measure: the desire to continue itself. No country illustrates this paradox more clearly than Japan. A nation admired for its discipline, innovation, safety, and extraordinary economic success has also become the birthplace of phenomena that sound almost impossible to believe. People who lock themselves inside their rooms for years. Employees who work until death. Elderly individuals who die alone and remain undiscovered for weeks. Entire forests that became symbols of despair. And perhaps the most alarming statistic of all, millions deciding that bringing children into the world simply isn't a future worth choosing. These aren't isolated stories. They're connected pieces of a much larger puzzle. The question this video explores isn't whether Japan is broken. That explanation would be far too simple. The real question is far more uncomfortable. What happens when a civilization achieves nearly everything it once dreamed of, but still struggles to answer the oldest human question? What is all of this for? Because every phenomenon we'll discuss, from declining birth rates to Hikikomori, from Karoshi to Kodokushi, points toward the same possibility. A civilization doesn't begin to disappear when its economy fails. It begins to disappear when its people stop believing tomorrow deserves to exist. Every birth is a declaration of faith. Faith that tomorrow will be worth inhabiting. Faith that suffering can be justified. Faith that another human life deserves to begin. The moment that faith disappears, civilizations don't collapse with explosions. They fade in silence. Japan is becoming the clearest example of that silence. In 2023, fewer than 760,000 children were born, the lowest figure since records began. During the same year, more than 1.5 million people died, meaning the country lost nearly 800,000 inhabitants in a single year through natural decline alone. Its fertility rate has fallen to around 1.20 children per woman, far below the 2.1 required for a population simply to replace itself. Politicians describe this as an economic crisis. Demographers call it population decline. Philosophy offers a far less comfortable interpretation. Schopenhauer argued that life is sustained by an endless cycle of desire, frustration, and temporary satisfaction. Every fulfilled desire gives birth to another. The reward for surviving is simply another struggle. If existence itself is inseparable from suffering, creating new life ceases to look unquestionably virtuous. More than a century later, Nietzsche diagnosed something equally unsettling. God is dead was never a celebration. It was a warning. Once absolute values disappear, humanity inherits freedom, but also the burden of inventing reasons to continue. Many never find them. Durkheim reached a similar conclusion from another direction. When the shared beliefs that bind a society begin to dissolve, individuals don't merely become lonely. They lose the invisible structure that once made sacrifice, family, and the future feel self-evident. This is precisely why reducing Japan's birth crisis to money misses the point. People rarely create children because governments offer tax incentives. They create children because they believe life is a gift worth passing forward. When that conviction erodes, statistics become philosophy written in numbers. A society stops reproducing long before it stops reproducing biologically. It first stops reproducing hope. Disappearing no longer requires crossing an ocean or entering a forest. Sometimes all it takes is closing a bedroom door. Japan gave the world a word for something so unusual that no existing language could fully describe it. Hikikomori. People who withdraw from society for 6 months or longer, often remaining isolated for years, sometimes even decades. Government surveys and researchers have estimated that more than 1 million people in Japan may be living in prolonged social withdrawal, making it one of the most unsettling social phenomena of the modern era. This wasn't born from smartphones. It wasn't invented by video games. Those only made isolation easier to endure. The roots run much deeper. Japanese society is built upon discipline, harmony, and responsibility. These virtues helped transform a devastated nation into one of the world's greatest economic powers. Yet every virtue carries a shadow. In a culture where belonging often depends on fulfilling expectations, failure can become more than a personal setback. It can feel like a public identity, a student who cannot keep up, an employee who loses his job, a young adult who disappoints his family. For many, shame doesn't end with the event. It follows them home. Days become months. Months become years. Curtains remain closed. Conversations disappear. The outside world slowly transforms into something unfamiliar, almost hostile. Japan even has a name for the next stage of this tragedy: the 8050 problem. Parents in their 80s continue supporting children in their 50s who have remained isolated for decades, unable to return to society. Entire lives become suspended between 4 walls, waiting for a future that never arrives. The cruelest part is that the world keeps moving without them. Friends stop calling, employers stop asking. Society quietly adjusts to their absence. Eventually, the room stops feeling like protection. It becomes the only universe the mind still recognizes. A civilization reveals its true values not by what it celebrates, but by what it quietly accepts. Japan coined another word the rest of the world eventually had to learn: Karoshi. Literally, death from overwork. Not a metaphor, not a figure of speech, a medical and legal reality. Heart attacks, strokes, and fatal stress-related illnesses after relentless working hours became so common that the phenomenon required its own name. Every year, the Japanese government recognizes hundreds of cases eligible for compensation, while experts have long argued that the real number is substantially higher because many deaths are never officially classified as Karoshi. For decades, working 80 hours of overtime per month has been considered a threshold associated with a dramatically increased risk of fatal cardiovascular events. In some documented cases, employees logged well above 100 hours of overtime before collapsing. A life measured only by productivity eventually reaches a terrifying conclusion. A person stops existing as a human being and becomes a function. Then comes an even darker word: Kodokushi. Lonely death. Every year, tens of thousands of people in Japan are estimated to die alone, many remaining undiscovered for days, weeks, or even months. In Tokyo and other major cities, specialized cleaning companies have built entire businesses around apartments where bodies are found only after neighbors notice an unusual smell or unpaid bills begin to accumulate. Nothing illustrates modern isolation more brutally. Someone can spend an entire lifetime surrounded by one of the most densely populated societies on Earth and leave it without a single witness. The tragedy isn't confined to old age anymore. Middle-aged adults living alone increasingly appear among these cases, reflecting a society where family bonds, neighborhoods, and lifelong friendships have steadily weakened. Death itself was never the greatest catastrophe. The greatest catastrophe was becoming socially invisible long before it arrived. The greatest fear was no longer dying. It was realizing that no one would notice you were gone. Silence can become so heavy that it begins to sound like an answer. At the northwestern foot of Mount Fuji lies Aokigahara, a forest so dense that wind barely reaches its floor, and sound is swallowed almost instantly. For decades, it became internationally known not because of its beauty, but because thousands associated it with a final destination. Authorities no longer publish the number of bodies recovered there, precisely to avoid encouraging imitation. But its symbolism has long outgrown statistics. The forest was never the disease, it was only the symptom. Japan recorded more than 21,800 suicides in 2023, marking the second consecutive annual increase. Even more disturbing, suicides among children and teenagers reached record levels in recent years, exposing that this crisis is no longer confined to older generations or economic hardship. Numbers explain the scale. They never explain the silence. Émile Cioran once wrote, "It is not worth the bother of killing yourself, since you always kill yourself too late." This was not an invitation to death, but a ruthless observation about existence itself. His philosophy dismantled comforting illusions and forced an uncomfortable question. If suffering is inseparable from consciousness, what ultimately justifies continuing? Philippe Mainlander reached an even darker conclusion. He believed that existence itself moves towards self-extinction, that life carries within it an impulse toward its own dissolution. Whether one accepts his philosophy or rejects it entirely, its unsettling relevance becomes difficult to ignore when an advanced society begins questioning not merely how to live, but whether life should be extended into the future at all. Aokigahara became famous because people searched for a location. The real tragedy began long before anyone entered the trees. It began when meaning quietly disappeared from ordinary life. The central question was never, why die? It was, why continue? Because before a forest becomes a symbol of death, an entire society has already wandered into a desert of meaning. History rarely announces the arrival of a new era. It whispers. By the time everyone notices, the transformation has already happened. That is why this story was never truly about Japan. Japan simply reached the destination first. Across much of the developed world, the same pattern is beginning to emerge. More than half of all countries and territories now have fertility rates below the replacement level of 2.1 children per woman. South Korea has fallen below 0.8. Italy, Spain, Germany, and much of Eastern Europe continue to age rapidly. Loneliness has become so widespread that countries including the United Kingdom and Japan have created government positions dedicated to addressing social isolation. What once appeared uniquely Japanese increasingly resembles a global trajectory. One symptom alone explains very little, but together, they reveal a civilization changing its relationship with existence itself. People work more efficiently than any generation before them, yet report record levels of burnout. Communication has become instantaneous, while loneliness continues to rise. Individual freedom has expanded beyond anything previous centuries could imagine, yet community has steadily retreated. Material comfort has improved. Existential certainty has not. Perhaps this is the paradox modern civilization never expected. Human beings mastered the art of extending life before answering what life is ultimately meant to serve. Viktor Frankl, writing after surviving the concentration camps, observed, Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. His insight was never about optimism. It was about structure. Meaning does not erase suffering. It gives suffering a direction. Remove that direction, and even prosperity begins to feel strangely empty. Japan forces the world to confront an uncomfortable possibility. A society does not disappear only through war, famine, or economic collapse. It can slowly dissolve while remaining wealthy, peaceful, and technologically extraordinary. Not because people stop breathing, because they stop believing that tomorrow asks anything of them. Perhaps Japan did not lose the will to live. Perhaps it lost something even more fundamental, the conviction that a shared future is still worth building. And if that can happen to one of the most disciplined, prosperous, and sophisticated societies ever created, then the most important question is no longer, what happened to Japan? The question waiting for every modern nation is far more unsettling. What is happening to us? If this video made you see the world differently, consider supporting the channel. By becoming a member, you'll unlock 100+ exclusive videos available only to members, while helping us create more in-depth content like this. If you prefer, you can also support this video directly with a super thanks. And honestly, just watching, subscribing, and sharing these videos already helps more than you know. Thank you for being part of this community.